Still a few more popping in, Jason, just a sec.
Okay.
All right, I think you're good. I'll just keep an eye on it and let people in as they come in.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks everybody again for joining us on our bi-weekly coaches meeting. And I know we had an extra week in between this last time. Actually, first I want to thank anybody who was able to join us last week during our celebration ceremony. We had a really good time with it, and I think we got some good positive feedback from some of the athletes. And there's definitely some notes we took to learn for the next one. So we appreciate everybody sharing that with everybody in their agencies. And I think, like I said, I thought it went well. And if anybody has any feedback or anything like that, please feel free to share it with us, and we can definitely apply it to the next time we start planning for the next one next week. So, I think the first thing I wanted to go over, because it may take up more time. I know people may have some questions with what what was sent out today as far as our phasing, the new phasing guidelines in accordance to the Wisconsin Department of Health Services data. This kind of falls into line with what we've kind of been talking about with return to play this whole time, where we moved people into phase 1 who wanted to start, and had the opportunity to petition into phase 2, knowing that if situation with COVID started to get worse, that we could potentially move back a phase or go back to no practices. And so a couple weeks ago, when we ended up having to cancel the event for the in-person event for punt, pass, and kick and cornhole, it was part of the internal conversation of how are we making those decisions? Is it off of gut feel? Is it? I mean, obviously it was data driven, but how you perceive that data really depends on how you perceive what's going on with COVID and how you see stuff going around in your own community. And we wanted to find a way that was a little bit more black and white than that, than having some of the gray area. And so as we kept looking through data, and fortunately we found about a month ago, the Wisconsin Department of Health Services updated their website, and that seemed to be the most comprehensive data that we could find. It was not only comprehensive, but it was easy to read. And that's why we chose to go with that data. And as we looked at the different pieces of information we had, burden rate made the most sense from an overall standpoint, because it gave us a picture of how the numbers for COVID cases were growing or shrinking in different areas. And just noting that our population does fall into, the population that we serve with athletes does fall into a higher risk category. It was important for us to be a little bit conservative and not go off of numbers like hospitalization rate or something like that. So before I get going, what I'll do is I'll share my screen, just go over the information that was sent today. I know some people read it. I don't know if people have looked too deep into it, but we want to give the opportunity to talk about it tonight. So this is the chart that we are using as far as the maximum allowed phasing for agencies. And really the other big piece for this, not only from the cancellation previously, but what sparked that cancellation was that Wisconsin number are spiking for COVID, and that's at a higher rate than the rest of the country, or most of the country is. And so we just really wanted to be cautious of that. So this is these are the numbers that we've used. The numbers that came up for as far as what the burden rate is, from low to very high, is what the Wisconsin Department of Health Services created. And we just followed the trend where it was basically doubling to get to the next level. So our extremely high level that we came up with was 700. And again, that number is the number of cases, positive cases in the last 14 days per 100,000 people in Wisconsin. And so, and actually it's per 100,000 people in the county when you look at the county numbers. And my brain works a little bit differently in the sense that I look at that and I look at the percentages, and what that really means is that 7% or more of the population in that county has tested positive for COVID in the last 14 days, which is kind of a high rate. And if you look at across the state, and I'll pull up the data. Can you see the website now? Yes. So if you look at the data, there is actually, I believe there's one county that's actually over 2,000 at this point, so which is a really high spike. When we started talking about this, there was a couple of counties that were over 1,000, and now there's a decent amount that are above this. So if you're looking at the map, the dark blue area is what they consider very high. That's the maximum rating the Wisconsin Department Wisconsin Department of Health has. So you can see we have 4 counties in this entire state right now that are not in the highest rated category from that Department of Health. Granted, that just because it's dark blue right now doesn't mean that you fall into our highest category. Again, we created a different level for stopping practices. But the reason why there was a couple agencies who had phased into phase 2 that we moved back to phase 1 is just because this is where this is kind of the state of our state right now. So we just felt with the safety of our athletes that it was the best to try to take some caution here, take a break. And the one thing I've been telling people, we've reached out individually to agencies who are affected where they've had to phase back. That everybody who has an agency who should phase back should have received an email or a call today from your athletic director. And for people in regions 4 and 5, I reached out to those agencies. And some of the questions came back of, how is this looking, trajectory, and all that type of stuff. The good thing about this website, it does tell you kind of the direction that the county is heading. And so there are people, the growing rate means that it is growing at a rate higher than, I believe, 10%. No significant change or shrinking. So you could be able to kind of give it a little bit of a feel of, like, for example, if you're in one of these, like if you're in Vernon County, you have a rate that's at 462, but it's also shrinking. So that's something you can help project when you're looking at some of these things, compared to some of these counties up here in the very high rate that are also growing currently. And that's just based off of the weekly data. And as we stated in the memo, this updates every week on Wednesdays. And so what we've decided as a sports department is to meet Thursday mornings to go over the new data, and then I'll then reach out to programs that have any effect in which phase they're in, whether that means they go from phase 0 to phase 1, or they go from phase 1 to phase 0, and looking at some of those type of things. And then when you look at it, this does seem pretty significant right now, and it kind of is, but the rates do change pretty quickly at times. Unfortunately, recently it's been changing towards where we're having higher rates. But you can click back to previous weeks, and as you can see, even if you go back a couple weeks ago, we had more and more counties that fell into just the high category compared to the very high category. And so that at least tells you that it can grow quickly or and shrink quickly, especially with being updated weekly. So not to get very discouraged by having high numbers right now, but hopefully that some of these counties can start trending downward quickly. And then the other thing, and I'll get our screen share here. So again, these are just the rate we went off of. And we also wanted to make sure that we distinguish that it is safer to have larger events outdoors than indoors. And unfortunately, we're going to an area where I think some people saw snow this week. So more and more indoor activities are happening. But if we are able to give it to the spring and have outdoor activities, it takes less for us to have a safer event outdoors. And that's what we did want to distinguish between the two on that type of stuff. And then the last thing on all of that, we are going off of what we have when we contact agencies about where their phase is. We're going off of where you have listed as your home county. So we do understand that there are some agencies that cross counties. And so they may be practicing in a county with lower numbers, and that would change our opinion on which phase you would be. And so that's just something that if you guys are practicing in a county that's not your home county, just like I said, feel free to please tell your athletic director that, and we'll change which data points we're working on with your agency. So I know that's a lot of information. It's a lot of new information, and I think we ended up affecting 9 agencies, either between going back to phase 0 or going from phase 2 to phase 1. So I did want to give an opportunity either in the chat or if somebody wants to speak up and ask some questions, we're more than willing to try to answer those. And then I will also state that if it's a bowling specific question after we go over just this policy, I'm going to have Michaela and Nicole share some of the changes we've done to the bowling season to try to accommodate for some of this stuff. So does anybody have any questions with these new guidelines that we sent out today?
Looks like Mike has a question in regards to his practicing bowling with Wausau. And I see
Okay.
Bev on the call, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, and Mike, if I'm not quite sure about the specific with that county, so I would touch base with whichever agency you are bowling with.
It is with WASA, but I was wondering if I'm supposed to stop with your new guidelines or do I continue with that?
WASA is moving back to phase 0 due to the COVID numbers. They're at over 1,000.
So do
So
I
you bo-
stop practicing?
Yes, because you're bowling with that agency.
Oh, okay. Then can I do the virtual?
Yes, you can.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Michaela.
Of course.
So is it a 2-week time span then? Correct?
It's until the numbers get back under 700. So we'll just be in contact with WASA and let them know when that happens in their county. So hopefully it's a short-term thing, but it's not something we really can predict at this time.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Yep. And I guess the reminder on that with Mike asking for virtual, the virtual option for those in phase 0 is the 10-pin challenge. It is not the somebody had asked that question. Is there a difference between people who are going to a practice in a bowling alley together or people bowling with their families? If you move back to phase 0, which would be, if your agency is in a county where the COVID burden rate is higher than 700, that would mean that those bowling with families would also be affected by that. So they would need to stop bowling for Special Olympics league purposes. Does anybody else have any questions specific to that new guideline?
I actually have a question. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm speaking on my AirPod.
Yep.
Okay. So Agency 412 has been bowling since about August, and I just submitted a bunch of scores to Michaela actually. So with the number of scores that we have, do you think a lot of our athletes would still be eligible for virtual competitions or anything like that? Or should I have them do some more of the 10-pin challenges?
You sent in like 6 weeks worth of scores or something like that, right?
I believe so. I don't have it in front of me, so.
I would say just keep those for now. We'll keep an eye on the numbers for COVID, and we can always tell them to do the 10-pin challenge as well, but you might be good for now. And hopefully
Okay,
the numbers
sounds good.
You can have your athletes do both in-person bowling and the 10-pin challenge. So even if in this kind of in-between period where you're not going to the bowling alley, you would like to do the 10-pin challenge, and then you're able to return to an alley, that's totally fine.
And we'll get to, the biggest thing with all of this is we understand that the county numbers to a large extent are out of people's control. And so we really do want to work with agencies, and that's why we've made some changes to how we're doing the bowling league this year. We really want to work with agencies to try to make sure people can participate. And so by being able to submit, bulk amount of scores and that type of stuff, that would be a way that we can help make it work. And really what we wanted this to do, just like everything else with this, is being a partnership in the sense of, let's work with what your current situation is and see how we can fit it into participation for the bowling league and make it fair for everybody, but also make sure that we're not eliminating people for no reason. So, or for reasons outside of their control. So,
Bev, did you have your hand up before? Did you have a question? Oop, you got to unmute though. There you go.
It's a Michaela question. We just started this week on the 19th. Are we sending you scores or is Jeff holding them?
You can send me the scores from this week, just the next weeks that you are suspended for right now until COVID numbers decrease.
Okay,
Okay, maybe we'll do this. Do we want to move into the bowling changes and that type of stuff, and then we can answer any questions that affect bowling and total?
Yeah.
I mean, majority of the agencies that this has affected has been the bowling agencies.
Mhm. Yeah, so we did a new structure to bowling. We actually extended it 1 week. So now it goes from October 19th through December 20th. And we're asking athletes to bowl 14 games. But the first 2 games that you bowl will set your starting handicap. And then the remaining 12 will count towards your final score for the league. And then we're going to continue having a rolling handicap every 2 games throughout the league. And then agencies that are actively bowling still send us your scores every week if you have them. But if you have more than 2 games per week, feel free to send us more, just in case your agency has to be suspended for COVID cases. And then we are also having weekly challenges throughout this time, which Nicole will talk about here soon. And so with the extension of the bowling, our awards ceremony will now be on December 22nd. At 6 p.m., where the final results will be announced.
Are there any questions about league structure before we jump into the weekly challenges?
Smitty, do you want to ask how they're going to do that? That other gal's on. Hey. Yeah.
All right, so I'll jump into the challenges really quickly. So like Michaela said, if you guys are still bowling on a weekly basis, please submit your scores to myself or Michaela, depending on where you're at, and you will, for the most part, automatically be entered into some of our challenges. So for this first week, for those of you who started official competition this week, there is no challenge. Next week will be a Halloween challenge. So if your athletes bowl in a Halloween costume, please take a picture and either send it to myself or Michaela or our marketing team at media@specialolympicswisconsin.org. And those pictures will be featured on our social media channels and website. The third week will be North versus South. So Michaela's regions of 2, 3, 4, and 5. Will challenge the southern regions of 6, 7, 8, and we'll combine all the scores we receive those weeks, and whichever region has the highest average will win. The following week will be best bowl challenge. So if your athletes bowl their best score so far in the league, they will receive a prize. The following week will be the turkey challenge. So if you have any athletes that bowl a turkey, they will win a turkey. So we will need a little extra that week. We'll need proof of their scorecard for that one. Over Thanksgiving, there will be no challenge. And then the last 2 challenges will be the 10-pin challenge. So as I mentioned before, even if you're bowling in person, we encourage you to do the 10-pin challenge, which is our virtual challenge, and there's lots of information online about that, and we'll be sending some follow-up stuff out. But basically it is a personal improvement challenge, so your athletes can do the 10 exercises and record their preliminary scores, and then practice some of the exercises over the next couple weeks, and then record some final scores, and they will receive participation awards with the goal of improving some of those scores over the time period. And the last challenge will be the strike challenge. So just we'll just need total number of strikes by all of your athletes. And for that one, it can, yeah, we'll send out more details about that later. So those are some of the weekly challenges. For the most part, if you just submit your scores, we will calculate that all on our end and send out some information. So please remind your athletes of these challenges. We're hoping that it's a fun way for teams to stay connected, even if they can't see each other at regional competitions. And there will be some stuff highlighted on our Facebook page. So hopefully athletes will be able to get in on the fun there. So any questions about any bowling stuff?
All right, and I think, Nicole, I don't know if you can answer that from Hannah in the chat.
Yeah, so West Madison has already started bowling. Their bowling coach is actually on. So Brenda, if you want to unmute yourself. I don't know where Hannah is, but
Yep. This is Brenda. We have 2 shifts of bowling. The 11 o'clock shift is full as far as I can only have 8 bowlers. So if she wants to bowl with us, she'd have to bowl at the 9 o'clock at Schwagler's. So I have 6 bowlers now, so there's room for just 2 more bowlers.
so Hannah, why don't you send a private message to, you can send it to me, Nicole Christensen, with either your phone number or your email, and we'll get you in touch with Coach Brenda.
Yep, and just to answer another one, yes, the new bowling awards date is December 22nd. And part of we extended the week and we were looking at other times to extend it, but knowing with the holidays coming up at the end of December, we were trying to get it finished before 2021. Just like everything else, if there's a big spike statewide, it doesn't mean that we wouldn't huddle back up and try to find a way to extend that a little bit too. I think we all, just throughout everything that we're doing with all of this is, flexibility and adapting is key to this. So the plans we have right now is that we would end, I believe, with the submission date is what, the Friday, Sunday
the 20th would be the last submission day.
Sunday the 20th, the last submission day, and then the awards on the 22nd. And even with pushing back the league, I will point out that we are still planning on doing the celebration ceremony for that season the week prior to that. That way we can make sure that the holidays aren't interfering with what we're doing with that. And we're still able to celebrate the athletes who are bowling. And since it's a continual league, if we get pictures or videos and all that type of stuff we can use for that throughout the season, that would be beneficial. And then with the ability to do more than 2 games a week, it's really good. It gives a chance for agencies to catch up, especially the early ones that are unfortunately not able to participate right now. But for those who are currently participating, if you want to plan ahead and try to get as many games in on the front end as you can, just in case you have to submit those later on, that's probably not a bad plan. Again, I really, just like everybody else with this, I really wish we had a crystal ball and knew what the next 2 weeks are going to look like, what the next 6 weeks are going to look like. But we can just go off of the same information that everybody else has, and then kind of go according to that. So the best thing everybody can do is to be safe for all of this, and then also be a little bit prepared and planning for what to do now and what to do if you're when you return, whenever that date comes up. And then, like I said, if more and more programs are affected by it, I think then that's when we have a conversation about what we do for the remainder of the season, as far as extending it or changing anything on that type of stuff, or reducing the number of games, or there's a lot of different options that we can go with to make sure that we get participation in this. But again, the biggest thing is let's keep communicating. The last thing I want to do is have an agency feel like, since they can't participate right now, that they choose not to do it in the future, when we could work with them and get the athletes opportunity to participate and compete. So something to keep in mind with that. The last piece for bowling that I wanted to do as a reminder is that we are currently taking nominations for USA games. And so currently we're doing those as an online form. If you're on our homepage, this is just SpecialOlympicsWisconsin.org. On our homepage, we'll say nominate an athlete today. And if you click on that, it'll bring up not only where the forms are, but also gives you an idea of what we're bringing to Orlando in 2022. And if you click on the now accepting nominations thing right here, it will pull up the form for you. And the reminder for bowling criteria is, if you received a gold medal at any of the 4 state bowling tournaments in 2018 and 2019, or if an athlete completes the bowling season or bowling league in 2020, they'd be eligible for USA games. again, it's one of those things where if your season is cut short, but you have an athlete who's been committed to the bowling league, we would work with that. But the biggest thing is we wanted to say completed the 2020 bowling league because we didn't want athletes who were nominated to be nominated if they show up for 1 week or 2 weeks and then leave and not practice because of their own choices on that. The other criteria for that is that the minimum average score is 55. So if you have any athletes that meet that criteria that you think would be good to travel as part of Team Wisconsin to the USA Games, we highly recommend nominating. So you can find it right there. And then the submission deadline is January 15th. So you can go through the season and obviously still submit. It's normally for USA Games, we'd be starting the year where if you were to meet criteria for these upcoming sports seasons starting this fall would be the way to get nominated. But with COVID and some of the uncertainty, we've extended that backwards. So we wanted to try to include almost more athletes than not enough athletes for that. So if you have any additional questions for that, for USA Games, you can feel free to reach out to Don or myself. We can answer some of those questions as well. Yes, Don?
Yeah, the only thing that's really changed this time is that because it's online, we're not requiring the athletes to sign off from the agency managers, but rest assured, we will be contacting you with anybody that does get nominated from your agencies, and we'll have discussions about the athletes. So again, that's a little different than last time, but this way we felt it wouldn't slow down the nomination process. And then, but we still want the information from the agencies and to be able to let the agencies know that the athlete has been nominated by their parent or a caregiver. So you can still nominate the athletes yourself if you want. That's fine as well. And then let the athletes and their caregivers know. But either way, we're going to make sure everybody stays in the loop who's been nominated.
Oh, thanks, Don. The last piece from the sports side of things was based on another email that was sent out to agencies earlier, or it was maybe the end of last week, was our 2021 plans for offerings for sports. And again, I don't want to sound like a broken record on some of these things, but again, this is all contingent on COVID numbers. And also, some of these changes were made to try to minimize size for competitions and then also just some of them minimizing a little bit of cost on some of these things. And so we appreciate your understanding of some of these changes, but also understand that we're planning on these being a 2021 plan. And of course, if things change and we can go back to normal, we'd love to go back to normal. So just kind of a real brief breakdown for what we're planning on doing. State Winter Games, I think we've mentioned before, we are planning on doing it as a one-day tournament. And we are working on determining what events we are offering. We are planning on offering it in all four sports. But some of the things I think looking at like the number of races that we would offer in snowshoe or cross-country skiing might just be limited. So we can limit the amount of people at the venue at one time. And so scheduling may be a little bit different than normal, but the plan is to start in the morning on Saturday and be done, by that afternoon. And then we would not have the evening banquet and dance that we normally would have, just because of the number of people that would be attending that. Hotel rooms would still be available as they normally would be for both Friday night and Saturday night. And then we would probably also not have the lifeguards provided in the swimming pool, just to minimize some of the risk with that. So that's for Winter Games. Basketball season, as we kind of mentioned before, of not offering team basketball, but we were offering level 1, 2, and then it created a new level 3, which we should have finalized very shortly to be able to share with you guys. And the level 3 basketball skills is intended for team basketball athletes so it should be more challenging than the level 2 competition. And we would host a district competition, and then hopefully would be able to also host 2 different state tournaments, one northern and one southern. Gymnastics and powerlifting, those are currently volunteer run, and so we'd work with them and the venues to see what's available for us to run those competitions. So those could look similar to what they had in the past. It just again depends on availability of venues and all that type of stuff.
I'm sorry. I have a question on the basketball.
Sure.
For the skill level 3, because we have never done just basketball skills in the past. We've only just done team basketball.
Sure.
So if we're still in that, like the very high where there's no practice, like we can't meet at all, everybody's got to stay at home. Are there still, I'm assuming there would still be options for virtual competition at that level 3 tier then? Okay.
Well, and what I would say is we what we would plan is to have options for, if we were able to meet in person, we would also have an option for people to complete the competition in practice and submit scores like we have for some of our other events. And then we will have a virtual option. The virtual option typically is a participation based option, and we would try to find something that would be accessible to a lot of people. So it may not be tiered for the virtual option if you're still at the stay at home option, but if you are able to do smaller practices, then that skill level would be available. So it's just one of those things that not a lot of people have a full basketball court to set up and cones and all that type of stuff at home. So it'd be really hard to kind of tier out some of those. So it's probably going to be more like similar to some of our other virtual options of like, hey, take 10, shoot 10 free throws and record how many you made as a virtual option compared to like running through full skill stations.
Sure. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Just kind of real quick going through the rest of it. Summer game season, we would hope that we would be able to offer track and swimming. And again, some of these might be scaled down for the number of events so we can minimize the people at the venue. But again, those decisions are going to kind of be made based on how COVID's going. And then we will not, and then on soccer, we would also host, so we'd be looking at doing a one-day state tournament for soccer, combined into 2 regional events. And we'd be doing standalone state track meet and a standalone state swim meet rather than meeting up in Stevens Point. And that's part of it is just to minimize, that's a large event that we have up there to minimize the numbers. It also is a little bit of a cost savings for this 2021. The outdoor sports tournament season would be having our regional events and advancing to a one-day outdoor state tournament. It'll be scheduled as a one-day tournament, with no housing, and then we'd also include tennis at OST like we normally would. For the fall sports season, we are anticipating doing a bowling league once again in lieu of regional tournaments. And then with the idea that we would set a criteria for people to advance onto 2 state championship. So that would include one in Northern, which we are planning currently up at Weston, and then one in the Southern, which we're planning at Tosa and Bolero and Tosa. So, and then Brittany, I know you were probably going to touch on some other stuff, but did you want to touch base on the fitness and some of the fitness stuff that we have?
Sure. So throughout the year, we're also going to be offering a fitness competition. Right now, that'll be a virtual only fitness competition that people can do. Maybe they're not either comfortable or, depending on COVID, not allowed to do in-person activities. So that could be a perfect option for them. Or if they're just looking to enhance their sport experience and also do a fitness option at the same time, they could do that as well. So we are still kind of waiting on some of the rollout material from SOI. They're developing everything. And so once that's available, I'll have more information, but it'll be things that people can do in their own home, no equipment needed. And there will be explanations of all the exercises and things like that.
And then Mark, do you want to touch base with some ideas for the aging athlete sports?
Yes, we continue to investigate times for offering the aging athletes. We're looking at doing some demonstration days, one up in Area 3 right now, working with Barron County as a possibility, and a couple down in Milwaukee and in between, looking at bringing all the various aging athlete sports such as cornhole, horseshoes, rings, and we're continuing to investigate a few others. So our committee is putting some information together, but please keep your eyes and ears open for those dates. And part of that is we'll offer some fitness aspect to that. So not only will be demonstrating and working through the sports, but we're looking at it as from getting the family involved. So kind of a unified event, and having some fitness material that goes with it. So.
Thanks, Mark. And I would also like to say thank you to those who were the guinea pigs for one of our aging athlete sports in cornhole. We had a lot of people. We had a few agencies that tried it, and I believe we got some good feedback for people who enjoyed having cornhole as an option. So more to come with that. I guess with my screen share, I didn't see the chat. So one of them was, so the question I believe Brenda asked was where and how our current phase is communicated by county. So there's two parts to that. One, in the memo, we shared the website where that data is included, and really that was to provide you so you have an idea for what your numbers in your county are. All you have to do is go to that. Let me go pull up that map again. 1 second here. I will pull that up on screen share again. So we've this exact map and all that stuff is included in the memo. So if you were to say I want to check my current county, so I live in Ozaukee County, so right now I know it shows up on the website there that the burden rate is at 525.1, and it is currently showing it's growing in cases. And so if that number is below 700, then you're still allowed to be in phase one, according to the new guidelines. And we have a list of all the agencies who are currently participating. And so we know what phase you would typically already be in. So on Thursdays, when we meet, we will determine which agencies have changed of those, which phase they're in. And so if you're currently in phase one, and there's a few that we had the communication with today that said we are moving you back to phase 0, that would mean that would be communicated directly to the agencies and not necessarily as a widespread email to everybody. So it's more of that one-on-one communication. And then if you were in phase 0 currently and we check the numbers next week and your county is now down to 650, we will reach out to you and say you guys are now cleared to be back into phase 1. So it's going to be kind of a continual communication. If you have any questions directly about that, then reach out to your local athletic director. They'll be able to provide what our current stats are with that, if that's easier as well. And again, for the time being, you can reach, for those of you in region 4 and 5, you can reach out to me with any of those questions or concerns when it comes to that guideline as well. Sharon asked if submitted more than 14 bowling games, which ones are counted? Michaela and Nicole.
I mean, I guess I don't quite know. So if you want to have your athletes bowl, are you saying now because you're probably going to front load? Because before we had said that if you bowl more than 2 games a week, you can submit your best 2. But now if we have agencies front loading, it'll probably just be the first 14. We won't swap out scores once we have received them.
So now that WASA is in phase 0 and I sent scores in today, does that really count? Because they went back to phase 0?
Yes, because you bowled them before we went to phase 0, so they count.
Because I sent in my 3 games on the email.
Perfect.
I didn't know, that's why I asked before they went into lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the other way, so if we're going to take the first 12 scores, if agencies are planning on front loading their trying to get a lot of scores on the front end, just in case, maybe my recommendation would be to still submit those week by week in case you're able to get higher scores towards the end of the season, and then you could submit your 12 best based on how you submit those in. Does that sound reasonable?
Yep.
I had an understanding that we weren't supposed to turn any scores in until this coming Sunday. So we've been bowling since the middle of September. And I have not been recording scores because I didn't think we were allowed to turn them in that early.
Yeah, and that was our messaging before, that it wouldn't start until this week, but some agencies who were in a similar situation where they started early just recorded their scores anyways, and then now we're able to kind of sub those in if they had to move backwards.
Okay, so I'm going to start
It's
just
one of those
turning-
things where we're trying to be flexible with agencies that have to go back to phase 0.
So my plan is to turn scores in they bowl 3 games each week. I'll turn them in, and if you don't need them all, you can decide which ones. I'll leave it up to you.
And in an ideal world, we're submitting 2 scores a week like we would for the bowling league, and that's assuming that we're able to get all the weeks in without having anything change because of the COVID numbers. Just the recommendation of recording more scores than 2 per week is to help in case you do have to go backwards in your phasing. So
yeah,
again,
we're in
sorry, go
Dane
ahead.
County, so we do some struggling in Dane County, but as far as I know that we're okay to bowl, because I didn't hear from Nicole today. So
Yep, Dane County is still in that range. So
okay.
but yeah, like I said, we're trying to figure out some creative solutions to make sure we can get numbers in, and again be willing to work with people
Okay.
when it comes to that. So I'm just make sure I hit everything on my list. Otherwise, the one thing, and I think Brittany, you have to launch the poll. The one thing we were going to ask agencies for those who are doing some indoor sports, maybe outside of bowling, but already planning ahead for basketball skills, is if you're able to. We were kind of going to poll the crowd here to see, are you able to find gym spaces for your indoor sports? And so if you want to answer that and just give us a little bit of an insight where we're at. Again, we've talked about that being a struggle for some right now. So if you want to take some time to answer the poll that should have just popped up on the screen, we'd appreciate that. That'd be great.
Oh, you can answer.
Yeah, I think that, we did the best that we could with the basketball season, but I think after talking to some agency managers, I mean, the biggest challenge for us in holding competitions and for teams in practicing is going to be the ability to find facilities. I think that's going to be the biggest struggle that we'll have.
I recognize we might have people on the call that maybe are not part of the basketball or volleyball group, so they might not know how to respond. So right now we have 37%, so maybe we'll give another 20 seconds here or so for people to vote. And if an answer isn't exactly applicable to you, just maybe the best one that fits, just to give us a rough idea.
I really haven't heard from my agency as far as basketball goes. I haven't heard anything from
That's
the
okay.
nominee, so
You might just have to move to Wausau.
All right, last 5 seconds here, and then I'll end. Looks like we're kind of all over the place, which sounds about right. All right, and I can just share for those that are interested. So yeah, a smattering of everything, with most people not being able to find a place to practice right now.
And I think we've learned that again from reaching out to the venues we would currently hold events at, of either saying no, we're not able to host it this year, or get back, or let's touch base as we get closer to your dates. And so, like I said, that's very understandable, and we understand the struggle with that. If there's any way, if there's any way we can help out, feel free to reach out to your athletic directors, see maybe we can know any venues that are currently taking reservations. We can let you know, but the list isn't super long on our end either. And then I also know Michaela, I'll throw you out. I'll throw a conversation we had out under there. I do know that there's some places that are requiring additional information. So I know, like Michaela had said, what is it? The one of the locations for a tournament requires you to submit a plan.
Yeah, swim venue is having a mitigation plan and get approved by the health department in the county.
So if you do normally look for an indoor space, whether it's basketball skills or swimming, it may be a good idea to maybe contact a little bit further ahead than you normally would in case some of those requirements are in place too. So that's just something to think about as well. So
It's hungry now.
I'll leave it open real quick. Anybody have any questions from the sports side of things that we've discussed so far? All right, Brittany, if you want to go ahead and touch base.
Yeah, I just had one I've mentioned in the chat a couple times, but of course I'll send a follow-up email tomorrow with a lot of this information. I know it's kind of a lot of big ideas thrown out there, so don't worry, you'll have it in written form to review at your own speed. But I do wanted to mention quick, and Mark, I'm going to throw you under the spotlight. I don't know how much he's paying attention, but we had our first meeting we're already planning our leadership conference for next year. And so Mark, I don't know if you want to touch on that, but I did make a poll. We kind of just wanted to see your perspective of what you'd be interested in attending, because we're open to suggestions. So let me launch a poll. I don't know if Mark, if you want to say anything else.
Yeah, our goal from the very beginning was try to do something, face to face if all possible. But the world is not allowing us to do that with COVID. And in order for that to take place, we still want to hold some form of the leadership conference. So we're looking at possibly doing a virtual conference on a day and earlier. I mean, we're actually, as you can see from the poll, we're looking for some feedback as to that, but we hold a 4-hour conference, a live one, virtual one, and then maybe if things look bright and sunny in where we're able to get together in August, that we'll do something, do some form of get together still at that point, or do an additional, offer some recorded sessions in an awards ceremony around that time frame as well. So what we're looking for is some feedback from this group, kind of the start of what would you like to see? What works within your schedule and such as our leadership committee works going forward.
That second chair.
So I guess dependent on my answer on this poll here, I guess it kind of depends on, is there a tentative location in the state where this would be held? I mean, if I have to drive 4 hours, I probably don't want to do in person, but I'm just kind of, is there a tentative area?
The first one if the 4-hour one would be the virtual online. We would do it, let's say, just as example, on a Saturday for 4 hours, have a couple of sessions that you're able to go into, interactive and such. If we do face-to-face, right now, with the recorded, or we do a face-to-face, we've had Reedsburg set up, but it all depends upon things going forward. So that's our fallback right now, but that's still open for discussions. And Justin, you and I have talked before regarding travel and distance. So we will take that under consideration.
So it looks like we're at about 40, we just got another one, 48%, another 51, there goes a few more votes. So maybe 10 more seconds and then I'll close the poll.
Thank you, Mark, for your answer.
Yep. And the other key thing is we're not even sure, hopefully things are back to normal, but if they're not, Reedsburg may not allow us back in as well. I mean, everything is so fluid at this point. So we're just trying to gather information.
And it looks like we got another spattering of answers. So a little bit of everything and a lot of doesn't matter. I would attend no matter what. So thank you for your opinions and your input. It really helped us. We weren't quite sure what to do either. So we'll take it back to the team and let them know what you guys think.
Thank you very much for the input. It gives us a little bit of direction. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I might be willing to travel a little farther if we have a nice steak dinner at that leadership conference.
Don, how does my budget look?
Depends on how much you raise in the polar plunge.
Which does remind me, I would be remiss if I didn't plug all of the wonderful events that we have going on. So the virtual run series is finishing up this week, and I think next week is the last week. And then the Big Red Raffle is still going on. I will continue to send that information in the follow-up email as well, so you have that. I don't have any information on the Polar Plunge, so don't ask me about that, but I will send information on the Big Red Raffle. And I don't have anything fitness this week, nothing new. The Stride Challenge did start. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out, but I have nothing new to share on the fitness front.
Well, perfect. I would say we will be sending out in the follow-up email, there'll be some of the stuff that we've talked about, and we went through a lot of information and a lot of stuff to process. So obviously the email that went out today is the starting point, as well as what will come out with this coach's recap. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your athletic directors, feel free to reach out to myself or Don, also, or a lot of people do, we can get some questions through that COVID email, which is again, COVID@SpecialOlympicsWisconsin.org. And we really want to keep, again, the dialogue going and making sure that nobody feels that confused by any of this or overwhelmed with some of this stuff. And so we know it's a lot, and we know there's a lot of information to process, and we definitely want to be there with you and partner with you throughout this whole thing. So thank you again for taking some time out again tonight. We are back on the every other week schedule. So in 2 weeks will be the next one. Jotted down what that date is.
November 5th.
November 5th at 7 o'clock. So thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.